Welcome to Pigskins and Pageantry, a podcast dedicated to all things SEC football. My name is Wes, and I'd like to invite you to join me, Jesse, and Matt each week as we discuss last week's games, news from around the league, make predictions for the upcoming games, and much, much more. What's up, everyone? It's Wes. Thanks for listening. Bye weeks are nice and relaxing, even for fans. But I'm ready for the Dogs to get back at it this week in Jacksonville. We'll talk about that game and many other exciting matchups this week. But first, Jesse, how's it going?
I'm better this week. Thank you for asking, and thank you for everyone for bearing with me last week. My voice is back. I don't sound like I'm living in the depths of despair. So we're on the up and up.
Well, that's good to hear. Also, if you're watching, as you can see, we welcome back our host who was not here last week and thus has not weighed in on the Bama-Tennessee game yet. First off, how are you, my friend? And second, would you care to get your feelings out on the show regarding that game?
Well, as far as how I'm feeling like pure unadulterated garbage at the moment because I'm fighting off some bug that is steadily working its way through my immune system. Very much like Tennessee's offense ran all over UT Martin this past weekend. It's a similar trajectory. But I'll live. I'll survive. It is one of those things. As far as the Tennessee Bama game goes, I thoroughly enjoyed the finish. That was the ugliest field goal I've ever seen in my life, but it was just effective enough. And as you can see, I am currently in my Tennessee hype bunker because I'm trying to do everything I can to mitigate drinking the rat poison. So I'm glad the Vols are winning.
Kudos to you, my friend. Can I just take a moment and just give you a little applause because you are like one of the few. I see you in your bunker there. You're not buying into it, but man, there are so many. They are just basking. They are bathing. Yes, they are bathing in the hype right now.
Now let me clarify. I am very happy with the trajectory of this football team. I'm very happy with the trajectory that this season is going. However, I am well aware of the fact that it is near impossible to get through the SEC schedule unscathed. And I know we've got a big game on November 5th against Georgia, and Georgia's defense is historically and this year pretty stout. So I'm not going to go ahead and say it feels like 98, but it does feel like 96, 97-ish. And I'm just wondering if Georgia's going to play the role of Florida for us this year. We'll see. Again, I was crowing on Saturday after that game went down. And I have, tweeted and retweeted several things that are very pump of the chest and, look at us. But I know better than that. I know better than to let myself get my hopes too far up. I've seen what happens when that occurs, and it's not a pretty picture.
No, that's good. You kind of sound like me, because when your team's doing well, much the same as like Georgia was doing last year, it's like you've been there so many times before, right? You don't want to let yourself get your hopes up, and you're like, let's just be happy, but we're not gonna get too crazy, right? So. I hear you.
And the funny thing is if we can go back to the Bama game real quick. So when we watch the Bama game, just to talk about reactions, this kind of gives you a gauge of where I'm at as a fan. Like when you watch most Tennessee fans' reactions of beating Bama, like there was this big jubilation. There's videos all over the internet right now, people basically acting like they just won the lottery. I simply was watching it on my phone. I saw the field goal was good. I closed the app and went, okay, that was great. And then I went on about my day. Now, that's not mitigate what happened. This is obviously an important thing, but you have to take my viewpoint with a grain of salt because I get wound up, but I don't get super wound up like some people do.
Well, and also you understand it's a step, right? To getting where you want to be.
Yep. You take it week by week, and that week was a good week. You just got to hope the rest of them are.
All right, well, let's talk about last week, which was also a good week for Tennessee, and talk about some of those games.
Here's the news.
That is not the right clip.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
Oh, good times. It is news in a certain way, if you look at it that way, from a certain point of view. All right, the UT Martin Skyhawks at number 3, Tennessee. Tennessee taking this one 65-24. Jesse got the point in this one, so good job, Jesse.
Come back.
I don't have a summary because this was a blowout. Jesse, do you have any takeaways?
I mean, my one takeaway is, after watching highlights of this and reading through it, is Tennessee is good on third down on both sides of the ball. And we talk a lot about how third down is such a crucial time in a game. And so I think they're really efficient. They keep their offense on the field, and they've been doing that throughout the season. And obviously this was against UT Martin, but still they were able to convert on third down. They finished 15 of 20 on third downs and actually converted their first 8 and were 10 and 11 at one point. So, being down in distance was not an issue for them. They were able to extend their drives. Hendon Hooker ran for 22 yards when, it was 3rd and 19. So they had some really good plays offensively on third down. And then, on the opposite side of the ball, when they needed to stop UT Martin on third down, they were able to do that successfully as well. So that's a stat that if they're able to continue, specifically when they are still in SEC play, and if they get to go further, it will be advantageous to keep up that style of play.
Matt, your takeaways?
This team put up 52 points in the first half, and granted UT Martin's a smaller school, but this is a team that walked in at 4-2 that's leading the Ohio Valley Conference. They were looking pretty good. And they gave Tennessee some issues at the very beginning of the game. It was 7-all, I think, at one point. And I know I was a little concerned. It was like, here comes the hangover. And then Hendon Hooker did what Hendon Hooker does. And really pulled this thing out. The big thing, excuse me, the big thing that's the big takeaway here is Tennessee was able to get a ton of points, but then they were also able to get a lot of people involved offensively speaking. For example, Jalen Hyatt had 7 catches for 174 yards. Squirrel White, who has one of the best names in football, by the way, had 5 receptions for 122 yards. Kamel Keaton also had 5 receptions for 77 yards. So in the air, this was a big game for Hendon Hooker and for the offensive team for Tennessee. I want to take 2 seconds from this to talk real quick to any Ohio State fans that may be listening. And I want you to get real close so you can hear me say this. If you're an Ohio State fan, and you're saying CJ Stroud's the better quarterback, I need you to shut up. He's not. This back and forth that I've been seeing between people saying Hendon Hooker is not as good as CJ Stroud is absolute garbage. And you could quote me on that. I'm tired of it. I'm all about the hype with Hendon Hooker.
You just can't.
It's been all over Twitter for the last 2 weeks since the Bama game about how CJ Stroud is much better than Hendon Hooker, and I humbly disagree.
Well, they got to have talking points, and they got to keep the entire country interested, right? They can't just keep it at all SEC. At least
Ohio State is quite literally all the state of Ohio has.
That's true.
Yeah.
By the way, Ohio State only has one top 25 win, and guess who that was at the time they played them? Notre Dame. And we all saw how that worked out. So
right.
Every year.
Yeah. Well, my takeaway from this one was next, which is exactly what Tennessee said, basically, is just by the end of the game, it's just not making fun, because we all play teams like this throughout the season. So that's actually the last non-conference game for Tennessee. So let's talk about the next game. That was Ole Miss at LSU. LSU, in the end, it wasn't like this the whole game, but in the end, destroying Ole Miss. Nobody got the point because we didn't have faith in LSU, as you might expect, just given what given what we've seen this year. That just makes sense. LSU overcomes an early 2-score deficit and really bullies Ole Miss in the second half, especially the fourth quarter on both sides of the ball. So that was just kind of bizarre to watch, just them just sort of take over that game. Jesse, what are your takeaways?
I just have 3. My first one is, this is a signature win for Brian Kelly in his first year. This is a win that I think you're going to continue to hear them talk about as they talk about LSU as a program, this year and going into next season. Ole Miss came in unbeaten and LSU started to load on the points. So now, in some weird twist of fate, LSU is now 6-2, 4-1 in the SEC, and they remain a contender in the West. which is wild. We did not think we would be talking about that. Number 2, Jaden Daniels showed out. He was exceptional all afternoon. He, was all over the ground. He had 3 touchdowns through the air, 21 of 28, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns. He surpassed the 100-yard mark as a rusher for the 4th time in his career and the 2nd time this season. And with his 3rd rushing touchdown, he actually set a school record for most of those scores in a season by a quarterback with 8. So he is lights out right now against, not necessarily the best defense, but still a pretty good Ole Miss team. And then 3rd, Jackson Dart had to carry the offense, and LSU's secondary and pass rush was ready. Most of what I would say, the offense actually fell on him because they weren't able to do much on the ground, and their secondary, LSU's secondary rose to the occasion. Pass rush was on point, and they kept Dart off balance all afternoon. The LSU defenders were swamping the backfield. So it was a wild time for Dart, and he completed just 10 of his final 24 attempts, which is not great, especially in an Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin offense. So those are my big 3.
Yeah, I agree. Ole Miss's inconsistencies catching up to them finally. We've seen them kind of dance around them and skate around them and get away with things, but not in this game. As you said, Jaden Daniels, an incredible game. He's been in the zone the past 2 games. If you think about it, he's accounted for, like you said, 5 total touchdowns in this game, 11 total in the past 2 games, which is just wild. After we watched how he started, which wasn't spectacular. So yeah, and then after their bad loss to Tennessee, LSU is on the rise. Question mark? Matt, what do you think?
I was so confused by this because I was anticipating this to be a game at least up through the half and then for Ole Miss to pull away. But somebody apparently didn't tell the Tigers that because they did what Ole Miss was supposed to do. So yeah, when I saw this score come across the phone, I was like, whoa, okay then. I was really disappointed. I really wanted an Ole Miss Tennessee rehash from last year in the SEC championship game with both teams undefeated. That's what I wanted. It doesn't look like I'm going to get that this year, though. Although Ole Miss, like Jesse said, is still in contention. They're not completely out of the woodwork yet. They just got to find a way to beat Bama. Which
LSU is still in the contention as well.
I mean, that's true. That's true as well. The only loss they have in conference play is Tennessee. So, yeah, the West is wide open at this point, isn't it? Except for A&M. A&M doesn't have a chance at this point.
Which is so weird because usually we say it's the East that's wide open.
Yeah, usually. Well, aside from Tennessee and Georgia this season,
yeah,
Kentucky's kind of showed they were a paper tiger as well. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, what about Jaden Daniels here? Just completely slicing and dicing the Ole Miss defense. And again, this was an Ole Miss defense that we thought was a little bit better than it's been. Speaking historically, the last couple seasons, it's been pretty rough. But they've been pretty tight this season so far, but they weren't tight on Saturday. And as a result, LSU comes out with the dub.
Yeah. So that's some wild storylines to follow that we can get more into later. But yeah, interesting stuff going on there. All right. Next was Vanderbilt at Mizzou. Mizzou winning this one 17-14. Matt got the point in this one. Missouri was up 17-0, and then Vanderbilt scored on a fumble recovery to make it 17-7. Then Mike Wright, who took over in the second half after AJ Swan got injured, threw a 80-yard touchdown pass to make it 17-14. At the end, Vanderbilt was driving to score again, and I was like, they're going to get that SEC win, right? But they just couldn't get enough push on the 4th and 1. Came up short. Vandy remains at the bottom of the SEC cellar. So, what do you guys takeaways from this one? Jump in.
I think Eli just saved his job.
Yeah.
Because if they had lost to Vanderbilt, I don't know if he'd have got back on the bus to Columbia. I don't know if that have worked. That probably not Columbia. I'm sorry. Where's Missouri at? Are they in?
Yeah.
Is it Columbia, Missouri?
Columbia,
okay.
Missouri.
Yeah, you knew what I meant.
Yeah.
So yeah, big win for Missouri to pull that one out. It'll be interesting to see what they can build off of with this. Missouri has struggled mightily this season. So I don't want to say it's a struggle win because it's Vanderbilt, but it kind of was a struggle win, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the play of the week, maybe of the month to me, was in this game, which it sounds weird to say between these two teams, right? But in this game, Vandy's CJ Taylor at one point, that, I talk about the fumble recovery for touchdown. He hurdled Mizzou's offensive lineman while Anthony Orjies, yes, that's his real name, nailed the quarterback, caused a fumble, which Taylor scooped up and scored on. And if you've seen it, it looks wild. I actually shared it on our Insta on our stories, and it's just incredible. You have one guy leaping over the line here. You have another guy, just flying in and nailing the quarterback. It's wild to watch. So if you haven't seen it, check it out because it's wild. And then, my only other takeaway was I really wanted Vandy to get one here, which they almost did, but they kind of Vandy'd at the end. So
yeah, I mean, for me, the defense is the only okay thing about Mizzou. I can't say good. It's not good. It's like, like if you're going to find a silver lining, Brady Cook has a clear limitation to what he can do. The O-line doesn't seem like they can stop any D-line. Their receivers are not consistent. I don't know that they have a run game. The punt team, not great. So yeah, there's just a lot of problems. And then the defense is like, meh, but you can't win football games when only 1/3 of your team is doing meh, but they somehow won this one.
Yeah.
Sorry. I tried to find one thing.
It helps who your opponent is, I guess, at times. So
dude, this literally is a struggle win because it's against Vandy and it's so close.
Mm-hmm.
That is a struggle.
Yeah.
Just two guys in the basement duking it out with each other. It's just,
yeah,
it really was
a lot. It just kind of happens.
You know how we talk about like changing of the guard, and it's usually, like teams that are fighting for the top spot. Well, this was almost a changing of the guard in the cellar. So like who's down there? What does ESPN call it? The bottom 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right. Next, Mississippi State at Alabama. Bama winning this one 30-6. You guys actually had the same differential, different scores, but the same differential. So we did the math. Jesse gets the point. So congratulations, Jesse. You know what I just realized? I didn't total up the points this week, but you guys, we can.
I thought you were doing that to be dramatic or something.
No.
I'm still losing. So
I did
okay.
But you did pick up some ground. We'll figure that out.
But I'm still losing by like a lot.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right? Jesse, I would love for you to summarize this game as an Alabama fan. What were your feelings? What were your thoughts? And kind of walk us through it a little bit.
First of all, ESPN, or I don't know if it's ESPN or CBS, whatever this graphic is where you're trying to show like possession, turnovers, total yards, first down, you got to use a different color. The colors are too close. It's really hard to see. Someone has to change. So it's not going to be.
That is ESPN, by the way.
Yeah, ESPN. Too hard to see. This was a good one. We were back in Bryant-Denny, which was super helpful. It was a night game and our homecoming game. So that was really cool. And unfortunately, historically, Mississippi State has had to come in after Alabama has had a road loss, and it has been rough. And up until quite literally the last second of this ball game, Mississippi State had not scored a touchdown in Bryant-Denny Stadium in 8 years. The last person to throw a touchdown for Mississippi State in Bryant-Denny was Dak Prescott, just to bring everybody back to reality. But they did score in the last second of that game. So my, first takeaways here, there's a few. First is Bama's O-line did much better with pass protection. I think did an excellent job and, only allowing 2 sacks, which, coming off the Tennessee game was not the case there. And Bryce Young had all the time in the world. I mean, if you watched him on some of those plays, even when he was somewhat scrambling, he had so much. I mean, at one point he's like looking at the receiver, holding the ball, and he's just going, just move over a little bit. Like it was insane. The run game did not do as well, but it was okay. I mean, we were held to just 29 rushing yards on 27 carries, which is by far the worst showing for us. However, we got it done in the passing game. I thought our secondary did a lot better. We were obliterated and gassed in the Tennessee game. And I think some people's jobs got threatened, and we brought in some talent that was hungry to not sit on the bench. So after being embarrassed, this was kind of our secondary's bounce back game, and we really got what we were looking for. We held Will Rogers to just 231 yards passing, which is his worst game of the season. And Alabama also had a season high 15 pass breakups, which was led by Eli Ricks and Kool-Aid McKinstry with 4. So Ricks made his first start of the season for us, and he was looking really sharp. Like I said, we kind of went through the secondary and said, who's going to come in and do your job? And Eli Ricks came in and did a job, which was awesome to see. The next thing, which I know we harped on last week, was penalties. But for the first time this season, we're going to talk positively about Bama penalties. We had 17 the week before, which still makes me want to crawl into a hole. But we cleaned up a lot of things, and we were only flagged 3 times against Mississippi State. So not only did we reduce our penalties, but we actually got a few roughing the passer penalties called in our favor. And a penalty that they did not get called in the Tennessee game a week ago, which before it wasn't even, roughing the passer at that point, it was targeting. So that didn't get called. Again, we're constantly seeing this roughing the passer evolving. It's evolving in the pros, it's evolving here, and we're all trying to figure it out, I think, but it did get called quite a bit in this game. And then the next one is, like I said, Mississippi State scored in quite literally the last second of the game, which actually might be an okay thing. And I say this because if you watch back what happened, defensive back DeMarco Helms was furious at the secondary for missing, their job, their assignment. And I think it was probably a backup in at that point, but still we wanted to shut them out again and not allow a touchdown. So he was furious. Saban was very frustrated. You could see him on the sideline freaking out, but that's kind of a good thing, because what Saban says is, we always want to take these failures, which, allowing them a touchdown and still beating them is not necessarily a failure, but he wants to take the failures and not waste them. He wants them to improve the team. And so I think this is a good teaching moment. Even though it only lasted quite literally a second, I think it's a good teaching moment. And then the one thing I do want to mention too is this was a tough game for our friends at Mississippi State, for the players, for the fans, and for those that are family members of them. Sam Westmoreland, who was a freshman football player, passed away just 2 days before the game. And that's really tough for those guys to come in and be dealing with that grief and come into that environment. So kudos to them. They were great while they were in Bryant-Denny. We've seen so many stories of them. You see the story of Will Rogers helping one of our very elderly event staff, up a ramp, and the moment of silence for him before the game, and all of the stickers on the helmets of not just Mississippi State, but also Vanderbilt did it, Mizzou did it. So a really good grounding experience, I think, for all of the fans, especially probably us Bama fans that thought we were in despair last week. It's a sobering moment just to remember that this is just a game, and the people that play this game are people, and they matter. And it's far beyond football at that point. So our thoughts and prayers really do go out to Sam Westmoreland's family and those at Mississippi State.
Yeah, 100%. And I did, you're talking about Will Rogers, that did, like we were talking earlier, it did make me think that, what a fun thing for him to do, but just a reminder of, again, it's just a game. He obviously wasn't necessarily pleased with his performance in that game, but at the end of the day, it is just a game. And, doing things like helping her up the ramp, the elderly lady up the ramp, and just, again, just something in life to do that reminds us that it's just a game. So
also, did anybody else, I know I texted you guys this, but I didn't realize Will Rogers quite literally looked like he was 9 years old.
Yeah.
He has the youngest looking face I have ever seen. I don't know that I've just never paid attention to him without his helmet on.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, I guess he's just got one of those faces. I don't know. But I did, you were talking about how furious the team was at the end. I did see Saban sneak a smile there on the sideline. I did see that when he was standing with Bryce.
Oh my God.
He
won't say what they said.
No, they won't. So
they interviewed Saban and Bryce afterwards. They interviewed Saban first, and Holly asked him, she said, "What were you talking about? I saw you smiling with Bryce." And I saw Bryce smiling, and he was just like, I don't know. And then they interviewed Bryce, and they were like, "What were you and Coach talking about?" And he said, "Did you already ask him?" And she said, "Yeah, he wouldn't tell me." And he goes, "I was just going to say what he said."
He's not going to say anything different than what Coach said.
No, it was the most precious little interaction though, and a very rare one.
In terms of the game, I will never understand why teams that aren't expected to beat Alabama but are hanging with them early throw away points by deciding to go for it on 4th down instead of just kicking the field goal and getting the points. I will never understand that.
Steelers.
Yeah, well, that's a different struggle. That's just ugly. That is tanking at this point, probably at 2-5. Anyway, Bama gets back to form in this one. I didn't think Mississippi State's defense did terrible. All things considered, offense.
One defense did pretty well.
Yeah, the offense didn't do them any favors, though. It is funny. You look at the scoreboard, and it looks like it's lopsided, but you look at literally every other stat, and they're all just like split down the middle almost.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just an interesting stat to see. And then I think that kind of goes back to, though, I think Mississippi State is just not really ready for games like this yet. They'll surprise some people here and there, but ultimately they're still kind of mid-tier. And Mike Leach he didn't allude to it. He said it, that you just put an Alabama jersey out there and our guys get scared. So, whether that's true or not. And I know he's just trying to motivate his team, but that was interesting. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I don't understand that either. As a former football coach, I don't think I would have said something like that. And I understand the mentality of it. But Leach is an open book. If he's going to tell you what he's thinking, like he's not going to hold back any punches. He's going to be very honest and open. So, I mean, this is par for the course for him. The thing that kind of shocked me here was that, Bama puts up 24 points in the first half and then only 6 in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if Saban decided to take the dogs off in the second half or what happened there exactly, but I feel like this should have been a score of like 42 or 45-6. So interesting call. Maybe he's resting him to get him ready for next week. Maybe that's what he did. He's pulled him a little early because he saw that Mississippi State's offense wasn't able to do a whole lot.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. But yeah, ultimately Bama getting back to normal, and Mississippi State struggling against them. All right, next, and the final game, which was just blew me away, and we were texting about it as it happened. Texas A&M at South Carolina. South Carolina, man, 30-21, winning this one. Matt gets the point in this one.
Wait a minute, I picked South Carolina.
You did.
Oh, look at me. Okay.
Go back and look at make sure, but I'm pretty sure you did.
Didn't I? Okay.
And Jesse, you even texted us when it happened. The game gets started with the 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by South Carolina's Xavier Leggett to start the game. They also turned a fumble and an interception into 10 points as well. So, getting points off the turnovers, doing what they need to do there. Haynes King for A&M left the game in the fourth quarter with an injury to his throwing shoulder. So freshman Connor Wigman got to play, which was interesting. I mean, he's talented, but he's young. So the crowd noise at Williams-Brice Stadium caused most of A&M's 8 false start penalties. And I think Beamer was a little surprised at that, but grateful. He was just like, thank you on the post-game interview. SC able to hold them off at the end for a huge win. So, gosh, what do you guys make of this? What are your takeaways from this one?
LOL. Sorry. I own my trollness. I own my trollness. The first is, and we've talked about him, a decent amount. Spencer Rattler is not the guy to build your team's identity around.
Nope.
He's mediocre, but Marshawn Lloyd might be the chess piece to build it around. And he now has 451 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns in his last 4 games and another TD catch. So in my opinion, he needs to be this offense's identity, no matter if Beamer thought that was going to be the case or not. I think he's the guy, and Spencer Rattler is just, the one that's going to hand it off. This was a few firsts for South Carolina. So it's the first time South Carolina has won 4 straight games since 2013. That hurts. It's also the first win over A&M ever since they are now their West rival, I guess. I don't know.
Cross division rival. Yeah.
Yeah. First time in a really long time that I think the Gamecocks have had a super hyped home crowd that is like losing their minds, causing all of those penalties.
Sandstorm was rocking.
Yeah, they were. And at night they're wearing like cool black helmets. How fun. And then a stat that I saw that, because we're in spooky season and it's fun to talk about curses, there may be such a thing as a Carolina coach's curse. And I say this. So let's talk about Jimbo really quick. His contract is through 2031 and they are paying this man $9 million a year. So his job is likely not in jeopardy per se. However, losing to South Carolina has been bad for several SEC coaches.
Ooh.
If we go back to our crystal ball and we look into it, Philip Fulmer of Tennessee in 2008, Will Muschamp in 2014, and Dan Mullen in 2021 all lost their jobs shortly after losing to the Gamecocks.
That is something.
Surely the boosters at A&M aren't going to fork up that much money. There's no chance of that.
That is so much money to
that
just say
ton of cash.
Leave.
I mean, look at that rule.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I don't know why they're paying that much to begin with.
But man, to be that desperate to get rid of somebody, you have to have a lock that's going to be your next hire. Again, with all of these, we got to get rid of so-and-so. That's fine. Who are you going to get? I don't know.
I don't know, but I like a good conspiracy curse.
Well, A&M's going to have to play Ole Miss next week. And if they come out and get absolutely thumped by Kiffin, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's feasible. Or they could lose that game to Florida on the 5th. That could also happen.
Yeah.
It's not outside the realm of possibility. Or they could drop that game to UMass on the 19th of November.
Right. Well, while you got the floor, did you have any takeaways on this one, Matt?
How in the world did Carolina get to 5-2? Like, we were talking at the beginning of the year that Carolina was going to be the doormat in the SEC East, and here they are sitting at 5-2. Their only 2 losses are to crap, I closed that tab. I think they lost to
Georgia.
Arkansas and Georgia. That's the only 2 games they've lost. So is Beamer the guy? Is he the one that's going to turn Carolina football around? I don't know.
Really curious.
It's early yet.
See what you guys think about in the speed round. We'll get into that a little bit further.
LSU is 6-2 and Carolina is 5-2. I'm just saying things are turning out very strangely.
And Tennessee's undefeated.
Yeah.
Who saw that coming? I know I sure didn't.
Nope.
Well, they've got 4 wins in a row. First time in 9 years that's happened. So they got that going for them. On the other side, like I said, we get to see for A&M, we get to see Connor Wigman. Which is he the future of A&M? I wonder if he'll get the start next week, and I'm curious to see.
Some of the A&M sites I was reading are calling for it.
Yeah, well, and they may not have a choice if King. I don't know what his injury, the extent of it is. So yeah, A&M falls to 3-4, 1-3 in the conference. Like I said, or like we were saying earlier, Jimbo probably safe because of the buyout. But man, you know how we were talking about how things were just kind of so average, but weren't getting any better under Kevin Sumlin. Things are looking worse now. It's not just mediocre. It's looking bad.
I saw somebody tweet the stat. He has one less win than Kevin Sumlin did at this point in his career at A&M.
Yeah.
I think someone had 38 wins. Jimbo has 37.
And he's getting paid way more.
He's getting paid a lot more than Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin isn't even close to what he got paid.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
That's a bad look.
You start the season ranked at what was it, 6? Were they 6?
They were up there. I don't remember.
They were
5,
top
6,
10.
7.
It was,
Which again, way too much hype, but you start that high.
well, and also, I look at the recruiting classes that we were talking about earlier or before, and it's like when you're pulling in that kind of talent, but you're having this kind of performance, and that speaks to development, that speaks to coaching.
Well, and they're
So-
playing, it seems like they're playing to their opponent's level. And in a lot of cases, it's down.
Mhm.
And worse. It's like they're playing to the level and then they're like, we're going to go one further, and they're just not executing. They're not doing what they need to do. You see it with South Carolina. I mean, I know we barely beat them, but again, they were playing to our level. And then, Appalachian State, all of that. You can't do that. You got to play to your level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, coaching. So we'll see. All right, let's get into a little bit of listener feedback.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right, so just a couple of comments here from some listeners. First one is from Andrew. He says he doesn't think Bama should be in the running for the CFP. 2 close games that should have ended in a loss. I don't know, Jesse. I'm not going to ask you first because I know what you're going to say. But Matt, what do you think? Just looking at the losses, or the one loss, obviously, but then a couple of other closer games. Do you think that warrants them not being in the conversation?
I think that if Bama finds a way to win the West and get to Atlanta, I think you have to be automatically in CFP contention. Especially if you've only got a one loss, and that's to the current lead team in the SEC. Oh, that sounds weird to say. But except for Georgia, excuse me. So aside from that, I don't see how you can leave them out in the cold, especially if they win the West. I mean, let's be frank here. If you win the West, you're the top dog in the SEC. You're one of the top dogs in the SEC, which means you need to be in the CFP contention or conversation when it happens. So if Bama finds a way to win the SEC and they've only got the one loss to Tennessee, I don't see how you leave them out.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously they're talking about the Texas game, and they're talking about the A&M game. But again, like you said, they did what they needed to do. And let's not forget, A&M was with a backup quarterback as well. So, there's a lot of factors. I don't see how you can just say that they shouldn't be in there. Although,
look how many points we put up against Tennessee. Like we allowed them to put up a ton of points too, but we also put up that many points. And my question back is, who instead of us deserves to be in the conversation? Who would you then put into it?
Ohio State,
Michigan,
Texas
Notre Dame.
Christian University.
Don't forget Clemson.
Right? Like Clemson is number 5. Put
Don't even
Clemson in the SEC.
Don't even get started on Clemson.
I've already argued with Clemson fans. I kid you not, all
Syracuse.
weekend.
Yeah. All right. Our next one was from Rodell. I apologize if that's not pronounced correctly. His biggest takeaway is if LSU beats Bama, we are easily a top 10 team. If we're just taking that as a imaginary world thing, I can't really argue with that. If they were to pull that off, sure, they would be deserving of a top 10 team. What do you guys think?
I think they get in. I think they get in the top 10. I think.
Matt, you're shaking your head.
I just, when you look at their resume so far this season, their first loss was to Florida State by a point. And granted, that was really, way back at the beginning of the season. Yeah. But let's remember, this is a Florida State team that's lost 3 straight in the last 3 weeks to Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson. So, granted, those are 3 top 25 teams. But we know the valid.
What they do is, unfortunately, whether or not anybody else thinks we deserve to be in the CFP contention, anytime someone beats Bama, it's like they won a national championship and they skyrocket in the polls.
That's true.
Regardless of anything else.
I wouldn't say it's skyrocketed,
Like,
but yeah. So
isn't it going to be
LSU
weird though? One day, and Jesse, forgive me, but
no, it's going to happen.
One day, you're going to beat Bama, and it's going to be what you should have done. I mean, it's going to happen sooner or later.
It's
I'm
going to
not
be
saying
like when
anytime
Bama
soon.
beats people. Because when we
Right.
beat people, it's just Saturday. When people beat
Right.
us, it's throw a parade.
Right.
Well,
It has not always
be-
been that way.
to
I
be
understand.
fair
It will
though,
not always
Jesse,
be.
you have to remember never mind. Let's stay on the task at hand. So LSU with that opening season loss to Florida State kind of mitigates some of their impact. And then from there, they don't play another top 25 team until they get nuked by Tennessee a couple weeks ago. And then they managed to beat Ole Miss. But even if they beat Bama next week, top 10, maybe top 15, sure. But I don't know if that would necessarily constitute a top 10 team. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know if
It
I
would
agree with it.
They're
but I think
18
they
right
will.
now. I think if they win next week, you move them up to 12, 11, maybe 10 if somebody in front of them loses. But I don't see you're not moving them up to 6 or 5 or 7. Like that's
it would be quite the vault from where they were for sure. But I think you stack that up with a surprise win at Ole Miss or against Ole Miss, and I don't know. Now you talking about controversial stuff. I don't know if I would have stormed the field after that. That was a bit much at LSU.
Oh, at LSU.
Yeah. We're talking since we're talking about LSU. I was like, I know they pulled off that win against Ole Miss. Yeah, it was a good win. Not sure I would have stormed the field for it.
Not a storm the field kind. It's not like they just beat them for the first time in 15
like
years.
You've been there. You're not that far from a natty. You're like really not that far.
Also,
really
because they that was like their third offense or whatever, their fine was Tennessee's was like $100K, right?
100,000. Which, by the way, the Tennessee fan base raised to pay off. But anyway, go ahead.
But I think LSU's was it like 250? It was a lot more. It was 250 or 300 or something like that.
I think it's 50 grand the first time, 100 grand the second time. It's 250 the third time.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say theirs was significantly more. So
I think the fourth time you have to sacrifice the mascot at the 50-yard line or something like that.
Something like that. All right, let's
do that.
Yeah. Auburn may have done that at some point.
I guarantee Auburn's done something. There's some blood in that field. I'll tell you that right now.
No doubt.
They did some weird juju over there.
No doubt.
Sacrificed a goat in the end zone.
Well, goat wearing a sweater vest.
Goat wearing a sweater vest. Exactly right.
All right, let's do a quick speed round here.
Speed round.
All right, so let's start off with a good one here. We talked about Ole Miss and their struggles. My question to you guys, and Jesse, let's start with you first on this one. Is Ole Miss exposed and done, or are they more motivated than ever after that loss?
I think they're exposed. I don't know that they're done. I think it's what we've been talking about where they start slow, they're playing to the level of their competition, and then they decide in the second half that they'll actually play some football. And you can't do that. You have to play 4 quarters of football, of good football. So I think in the past, honestly, almost decade, their defense has been a concern for Ole Miss, and it's still a concern. So I believe that they are motivated. However, motivation only gets you so far, and you actually have to execute. I don't think they're done. They still have a decent record, and they probably still will have a decent record, but their weaknesses were exposed.
Matt?
Yeah, I don't think they're done. I have a hard time imagining Lane Kiffin's going to let that team just kind of flounder at this point. I think he'll find a way to get them remotivated, get them back up where they need to be. I don't see them limping their way into the end of the season. I just don't see that happening.
So I'm calling it. I'm going from calling a Tennessee Ole Miss SEC championship last weekend to completely flip-flopping and saying that Ole Miss is done. And I don't mean that Lane Kiffin's going to let them just flounder and whatever. But I think they were exposed. They have been dancing around, a loss all season, really, when we watch them struggle with inconsistencies. Mm-hmm. I think we've seen how they can be beaten, and they still have tougher opponents to play. And so I just see the losses mounting for them.
It may motivate them for next year. We saw this with Oh my goodness.
Matt
Matt
Corral.
Corral. Remember, Matt Corral did not start off well, and that team was not great
Mm-hmm.
when he was in his first, couple years, but then he really matured. And you could see that with Jackson Dart and the rest of this team. However, I don't think it's their offense that is the issue. It's their defense. And it
Yeah.
always has been.
Right. And so when the offense isn't firing on all cylinders, that's not a good thing.
Wait a minute. Wait. Hold on, guys. This is a team that's 7-1. You're writing them off because they lost to LSU.
I am.
I can't do that. Well, nope. I can't do that. I don't agree.
Yeah.
I'm gonna humbly disagree with you.
Cool.
Let's remember this is an Ole Miss team that's gonna get a chance to kind of regroup next week against A&M. That should be a cakewalk for that offense. Because A&M's offense can't really keep up. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's gonna be a cakewalk for Ole Miss. And then they're gonna probably run into a little bit of a buzzsaw with Alabama, but I don't. You're looking at a 2-loss Ole Miss team. I don't see them struggling. I don't see that. I dismiss it out of hand, Glass.
I hear you. No, I like it. All right. Next one. Could we see, and I didn't want to get there just quite yet in our previous discussion about South Carolina, but could we see South Carolina roll into Gainesville on November the 12th at 7-2? Keep in mind, their next 2 games are against Missouri and Vanderbilt. Matt, let's start with you first this time. What do you think their odds are at rolling into Gainesville 7-2?
Well, I think with who they've got over those next 2 weeks before you get down there, they've got a pretty good chance of it. I mean, the running game's being put on full display, like we talked about. I forget what's the name of the running back. I just had it and then I lost it.
Lloyd.
Yes, thank you. He's been having a heck of a stretch over the last. Yeah, Marshawn Lloyd has had a heck of a stretch over the last couple of games. And I don't, Spencer Rattler is just good enough to kind of help you get by. He's not great by any stretch, but he's decent enough to help you get a couple wins. I think that if they lean on the running game, especially against weak teams like Missouri and Vanderbilt, surely they should be able to get to Gainesville 7-2. And I would probably venture to say they probably walk out of Gainesville at 8-2. I don't see that.
Snap.
I don't see them losing to Florida.
Yeah. Okay. Jesse?
I think the Gamecocks are going to be in a very warm weather bowl game. I have to agree. I think they're going to win against Mizzou because they're abysmal. Same with Vanderbilt. I don't know that they get it done against Florida, potentially, but I think you're seeing a South Carolina team waltzing into a lovely bowl.
I think that's going to depend a lot on what happens with them in Clemson at the end of the season. If they're able to keep with and end up beating Clemson, I don't foresee them beating. Well, you know what?
I don't think they beat Clemson, but they could be back at the Duke's Mayo Bowl. They could be. I mean,
I don't know. I think Clemson is very beatable.
I think they
very
could
beatable.
Maybe if they get just the right breaks and they get right calls and Beamer calls the game of his life and Spencer Rattler finally turns into that Heisman contender he told us he was going to be, then maybe.
I don't think Spencer Rattler is going to do that, but I mean, they could walk into like an Outback Bowl. Who knows?
Yeah. Everybody loves Tampa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I tend to think that they will. I think they'll go down there 7-2. I think they'll be okay against Mizzou and Vanderbilt. So look out. Here comes South Carolina. So all right, let's do our last speed round question. Is LSU's rebuild ahead of schedule, or should we pump the brakes on that? What do you guys think?
Pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes.
And I'm not saying that because I'm a Bama fan. I'm saying that because Matt brought up the record before, and I know they're 6-2, 4-1 in the SEC. I get it, right? Like I understand, but they do have to play Bama. I'm not saying that that's a guaranteed loss for them, but it will be a test. Arkansas will also be a test. And then A&M is too finicky to even know what's happening. So who knows? But I think this is showing a lot of promise. I don't know that they're just back, because I also have to think about the Coach O years where we had our lightning in a bottle and everyone thought that LSU was God's gift to earth. And then they were abysmal. So I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, like we said, LSU is tied for first in the SEC West, and add on to that, they have the head-to-head against Ole Miss, so they're already looking kind of favorable. I don't know. I'm going to say that they are probably. I'm going to say pump the brakes as well. Yes, they're 6-2. They got a lot of tough games coming up, though. I could easily see them dropping 2, possibly 3 out of those. So yeah, Matt, what do you think?
I'm with the pump the brakes crowd as well, because again, let's remember this is a team that lost to a pretty rough Florida State team at the beginning of the season, and then they have not played any top 25 teams except for Tennessee, and that was a nuke. So that automatically makes them a little suspect in my book. They've managed to find a way to beat LSU pretty handedly this past week, or sorry, Ole Miss this past weekend. I don't see them doing that to Bama. I don't see them boat racing Arkansas either. I think Arkansas is probably going to give them a little bit more trouble than they're ready for. And I think the Chip Kelly era is off to a good start, but let's not go ahead and start claiming that. Or sorry, Brian Kelly. What did I say? Chip Kelly? Chip Kelly's over at UCLA. Let's not one of the Kellys. Let's not go ahead and say that he's the second coming of Les Miles. There's no need for that yet. We're not there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a good speed round. Let's go ahead and talk about the upcoming games and make some predictions.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble.
All right. The first game is Arkansas at 4-3, 1-3 in the SEC, at Auburn 3-4, 1-3 in the SEC. That is noon on SEC Network. Both of these teams coming off a bye week. So one thing that I read about this is Sam Pittman is worried about Auburn's ground game, but the question is Auburn going to give the ball to Tank? It's like, sure, he might be worried, but we've seen Auburn struggle to call a game plan that gets him involved. Jesse, what is your prediction?
It still weirds me that Arkansas is 1-3 in the SEC. I had such high hopes. But I do believe that they can get it done against Auburn. From what I've seen of the Tigers this season, I just don't think they have it in them. This is not their year. Now I say that, watch them go into Iron Bowl. But I am going to pick the Razorbacks 28-24, because I do think these teams are unfortunately pretty well matched.
All right, Matt.
If this was a night game, Jordan Hare, I would probably be tempted to pick Auburn, but the fact this is a noon kickoff automatically makes me think that Arkansas has a better chance than they would normally. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Arkansas here too. I think this is going to be a little bit of a barn burner at the end. It's going to be a lot of back and forth. I think KJ Jefferson gets a late drive to put this thing out of reach, and you end up with Arkansas winning 30-21.
All right. Yeah, I know weird things happen at Jordan Hare, as we've said. Yeah. And Robbie Ashford showed some promise, but KJ Jefferson is back and Arkansas is back to winning. I'm going to go with Arkansas 27-24. So a little bit different than Jesse's, slightly. All right. All right. Next is Florida at 4-3, 1-3 in the SEC versus number 1 Georgia at 7-0, 4-0 in the SEC. That is 3:30 on CBS from TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville, Florida. A little bit of history here. The first game between these teams, they can't even agree on that. It was either in 1904 or 1915, depending on who you ask, with the exception of wartime interruption. In 1943, they have played every season since 1926. Georgia leads either 53-42-2, according to Florida, or 54-44-2, according to Georgia. First meeting in Jacksonville was in 1933, and they've been there ever since, with only a couple of exceptions. Like most things in the 1930s, the railroad was a factor. I read that this week. I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense, because I was like, why Jacksonville? Fans from Athens and Gainesville could both access Jacksonville more easily due to the railroad. So, fun fact there. Jesse, what is your prediction for Florida versus Georgia?
This one's always a fun one. The Georgia-Florida game was actually my first college football game. So that was exciting.
Oh, yeah. Was I there too?
You were, and it was Tim Tebow's first game back after his concussion against Kentucky, where he broke Herschel Walker's rushing record. That is very hard to say quickly.
Helps to be playing against the mighty Joe Cox and Georgia's offense.
It did. That was a wild. That was actually the game too, where like Brandon Spikes tried to gouge that guy's eye out. Yeah, wild time. First football game or college one, but I do not think that the Gators are going to win. I think it's going to be Georgia. However, despite how these teams play, usually they play each other very, very tough because it is a very fun rivalry. So I think that Florida's gonna get some moxie and put up some points, but in the end, the Bulldogs are going to win. So I'm going to pick UGA 31-24.
All right, Matt, what do you think?
I have a hard time imagining that Florida is going to really be able to keep up with this. Let's keep in mind that Anthony Richardson has not really done a whole lot this year for Florida's offense to instill a lot of confidence. So far through the season, he has 1,300 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. So as far as keeping in the air, not the best idea. I don't think that they're going to be able to run much on that front four for Georgia. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick UGA in this one, 38-20.
All right. Yeah, Georgia's favored by 22, and I want to believe it, but it really just depends on which Georgia team shows up, to be honest. I say, as we talked about even on the show last week, and Jacob mentioned how Richardson is just on a team where he's just like the only one who's kind of like, the world beater on the team. Nobody else is really going to help him out. I think if we stack the line, bring pressure, force him to make throws under duress, I think that will accomplish what we want to do. And I think if we can do that, things will go well for the Dogs. I got Georgia winning this one 34-13. All right. Next is Missouri at 3-4, 1-3 in the SEC at number 25, South Carolina, 5-2, 2-2 in the SEC, 4:00 on SEC Network. Both of these teams coming off wins, South Carolina against A&M, Missouri against Vanderbilt. South Carolina has not beaten Missouri since 2018. So a little history there. And at number 25, this is the first time South Carolina has been ranked in the AP poll since 2018 as well. So it's feeling like 2018 in South Carolina right now. So Jesse, what's your prediction?
I think Carolina is going to be hyped, and I think Mizzou is trash. So I am going to go with the Gamecocks 21-17.
Matt?
I think this is going to be the hangover game for South Carolina. I don't think they're going to lose this game. However, I don't think that they're going to come out and be guns blazing the entire time. I think they pull away at the end to put the thing away. So I'm going to say South Carolina wins this game 21-14.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Matt. They're coming off a huge win against A&M, and this is going to be one of those weird games that South Carolina's not really used to. They're dealing with pats on the back and the rat poison and stuff that, it's not typically going on, there at South Carolina. I do think that they survive a letdown game. I think this is one of those where they kind of maybe win in spite of a few things. And I got South Carolina winning this one 27-21. All right, next is number 19, Kentucky at 5-2, 2-2 in the SEC at number 3, Tennessee, 7-0, 3-0 in the SEC. That is 7:00 on ESPN. After, as I mentioned earlier, after last week's non-conference opponent, Tennessee will play SEC teams for the rest of the season. It's interesting to see the differing styles on offense. This is going to be quite a contrast. The Vols averaged 2.85 plays per minute, and the Wildcats average 1.86 plays per minute, so about a full extra play per minute for Tennessee, which, as you might expect, just according to the play style. Kentucky's second in the SEC behind Georgia in scoring defense, but this will be their toughest test of the season, probably. Jesse, what are your predictions for this one?
Yeah, this one is not going to be what I would have assumed at the beginning of the season as a fun one to watch. That's going to be really dynamic. I think Tennessee puts Kentucky away pretty easily. I still think that, as long as Will Levis plays, it'll be a little bit of a difference maker, but he still has to be on point. So I'm going to pick the Vols 38-21.
All right, Matt, what do you got for your Vols?
Yeah, I don't foresee this game being very tight at all. I think that Kentucky has a stout defense, but the problem is I don't think they played any offenses that really challenged them Tennessee's offense is going to. There's rumors circulating at the moment that we may have Cedric Tillman back for this game. And if you get him back and Jalen Hyatt plus Squirrel White plus the running backs you have in the backfield and the playmaking ability of Hendon Hooker, I just don't see it ending well for the Cats this week. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Tennessee to win this thing big, 42-20. And that last Kentucky touchdown comes in garbage time with the third strings in.
Gotcha. But you know what? You may want to keep Tillman out just to make sure he's safe. You probably don't need him.
Maybe.
Then,
like I said, just rumors at this point.
Yeah. And then he's fresh for Georgia. I don't know. We'll see. All right. I have for this one. I'm not really sure how the schedule worked out here where Tennessee got 3 home games in a row, but it's ideal to continue.
Like Arkansas and Florida. They had so many home games in a row.
Yeah. It's ideal to continue that momentum mid-season. So I'll give them that. Kentucky's predicted to lose by less than 2 touchdowns. I'm not really sure what they're looking at on that one. Because with this high-powered Vol offense, I just don't see that being a thing. If they get hot, look out. So I think they do get hot, that is, and Tennessee wins this one 42-24. I will say that if they want to keep this one close, Kentucky is going to have slow, methodical drives led by Levis and Rodriguez to keep Tennessee's offense off the field. So if they do have a chance, I think that's going to have to be the recipe. So we'll see.
I think a big problem for Kentucky, is going to be running the ball. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball that well against Tennessee. Throw the ball, sure. You can throw all day on Tennessee secondary. You're going to have a hard time running the ball. So,
yeah, they're going to have to figure out some kind of different play calling, something. All right, and then the final game of the day, Ole Miss, number 15 Ole Miss at 7-1, 3-1 in the SEC at Texas A&M, 3-4, 1-3 in the SEC. That stat just doesn't look real. 7:30 on SEC Network. So again, will Connor Wigman get the start for A&M? We'll see. We'll keep tabs on that. One thing interesting to note here is Ole Miss is fighting for the West, and A&M is fighting for their pride at this point and not wanting to lose recruits. So, Jesse, what's your prediction for this one?
I feel like Lane Kiffin is going to be handing out like business cards to the A&M bench. Like if you want to transfer, if you want to transfer,
come to the
because they have a great recruiting class. They're just not doing much with them. And we all know Lane is this transfer portal king. So I think Ole Miss is pissed off. I think they're embarrassed, and I think they're going to start to clean up some stuff this week, hopefully. And they're going to go into College Station and they're going to put A&M away. So I'm picking Ole Miss 28-17.
All right, Matt, what you got?
Yeah, that was my thought as well. I think Ole Miss is going to be looking to kind of bounce back from that loss this past weekend. I think Ole Miss comes out swinging. Lane's definitely going to be going for it on 4th down a lot in this game. So I'm going to say Ole Miss wins this thing big, 38-20.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn here. I think Ole Miss. Yeah, I do agree. I do agree that they bounce back. But I don't know. I just feel like there's too many inconsistencies. I see them struggling again. A&M is at home. I don't know how much that really helps, but
I don't know. It's a night game in Kyle Field. That's tough.
It is a night game at Kyle Field. It gets mega loud in there. I think this one's going to be intense. I got Ole Miss winning an absolute slugfest and a nail biter. 28-27. So, all right.
Blaine's
so now
to be so upset.
And now that we've talked about all of them, I got to ask you guys, what do you think is the game to watch this week?
Oh my gosh. That's tough.
I know which one I'm going to watch. I'm biased. I'm going to say Florida, Georgia. I mean, it's just typically a spectacle no matter what.
I think the close one is going to be Arkansas at Auburn.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah.
I think the funnest one to watch is going to be that Tennessee game, though, because the offense is fun to watch. People like points.
Well,
I think there's a lot of good matchups this week.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all SEC, which is fun, but it's, you've got like Arkansas and Auburn that are pretty well matched. Mm-hmm. You've got Georgia, Florida, which is just a historic rivalry and really fun to watch. And then you've got Mizzou and South Carolina, who we thought at the beginning of the season were both going to be trash. And now you're seeing South Carolina and see how they deal with a little bit of hype. And then Kentucky, Tennessee, again, going to be a lot of high powered offense, going to be pretty fun to watch. In Ole Miss and Texas A&M, you're seeing an Ole Miss team that is good. And then you're seeing a Texas A&M team that has floundered, but they usually play okay at home. So I think we've got a really good list of games.
If I'm not mistaken, Matt, wasn't that Kentucky Tennessee game a barn burner last year? It was high scoring all the way up to the end, wasn't it?
It was. But
So
the defense has looked a little bit better this year than it did
yeah,
last year. So
certainly.
Difference. The offense has definitely looked a lot better for Tennessee as well.
Yeah. So
Also, can we just talk about, we don't have it just for fun, but what is fun is listening to the names that we say on this show.
yeah,
We have so far said Orgy, Squirrel,
yeah,
Kool-Aid.
yeah,
I'm trying to think of the other one. Oh, Hooker.
yeah,
And it's just like, what?
Right.
yeah. You
Some
just never
casual
know.
person's listening going, who are all these people? What?
Who are these humans? I don't understand.
What is this podcast about? Right.
That's what you need to start hashtag squirrel, hashtag Kool-Aid. Maybe don't hashtag orgy or hooker, but
Well,
don't do that.
it is
That'll
spelled
end poorly, don't do that.
ORJI, so it's at least it's not the same spelling. So I'll
thank
give it
God
that.
for him. Thank God.
Still not much better.
Yeah. All right. Well, on
Poor
that
kid.
note, let's get out of here. So thank you guys for listening. Like we said, exciting slate of games coming up. Ready to watch those. If you would like to contact us, please email us at pigskinsandpageantry@gmail.com. We are at Pigskins and Pageantry on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. On Twitter, we were at PPSCC Podcast. Don't forget, we are available for download on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and just all the things. So please, if you enjoyed the show, please take a moment, subscribe, and review. 5 stars, we'd love that. Helps our visibility, gets us higher on the list of visible podcasts. So hey, until next time, it's Florida Hate Week. This is Wes. Go Dogs.
I feel like that's the first time I've ever heard you mention like a hate week.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was waiting for something juicy, Wes. And you're like, it's Florida Hate Week.
Well,
Back to you guys.
It speaks for itself.
There's an opportunity right there to talk some serious trash, and you just went.
Oh,
Hey,
I'm
that's
good.
kind of on brand. I don't.
I
Really
know,
is
you're
true.
so kind. Bama fans, rest up, sleep in, go to therapy, do what we need to do to get our mental health right. Roll Tide.
Yep.
Ohio State, shut up and sit down. Go Vols.